Butzwick. I'm a special ed teacher at SIS, and I'm also the staff advisor for Student Advisory Council. This group is a combination of a leadership group we had last year called Student Advisory Board, which was just 8th grade students, and Student Council. So we combined the two this year to create Student Advisory Council. In order to be a part of this group, students had to apply. They did that by filling out various questions about leadership qualities they have, different clubs they're involved in, and what they were going to contribute to our team. They also had to ask 3 different staff members for their signature of support to be on the board, as well as get their parent support. The idea of forming this group is to have a very diverse group that involves a lot of different students from different social groups and different levels, so that we can have a voice of every student at SIS. And specifically also looking to address the areas of character and citizenship as we build leaders and get them prepared for high school.
Hi, I'm Rose Schnorr, and I'm the president of Student Advisory Council. And our vision for council is to improve the quality of life for students at SIS. This includes creating a culture of respect and positivity and ensuring that each and every student has a voice at our school.
Hi, I'm Ashton Woodley. I'm the Vice President for Student Advisory Council, and it's important for us to be a part of this group because it teaches us collaboration, respect, and how to listen to all people. It's also important for the school to have Student Advisory Council because in the past, students didn't really get to express themselves and their learning experiences and their experiences in school. This group ensures there is student voice in the decisions being made.
Hi, I'm Linnell Nash, and the Student Advisory Council. I'm the director of activities, and like we want to make activities fun and better for the students at SAS, so like they can build a better community and build a better environment. And we want to do community building activities also to like help build friendships and like make new ones. And we talked in our meetings on Tuesdays that issues that we have already came to address throughout the lunchroom, and like cell phone policies and capstones. For example, in the lunchroom, like the students don't really get a voice to like do what they want, like in cleaning up and stuff. And for cell phones, we just want equality and like so it's equal for the students and the teachers. And like for capstone projects, we just want like more support, and so like we don't like, because we use one project for the whole capstone, and we just want more help with that and more to understand better. And for testing, like the map testing and the forward testing, we just want more encouragement. So we like don't want, because every time we have to test, people are like they don't want to do it, and like they just don't have fun doing it.
Thank you for having us here today and supporting us throughout the school year. If you have any questions or want to learn more about our group, you are welcome to attend our weekly meetings on Tuesday during lunch.
Can we ask you some questions? Yeah. Can I ask about the, I'm curious about the cell phone policy point that you brought up. There's been a lot of discussion in this room where I think I think I know how some of the adults feel about it, but I haven't heard from the students, and so I'd like to hear more about that perspective.
Yeah, like they give us like cell phone caddies that we have to, because like sometimes in some of the classes we have to put our cell phones in there at the beginning of the class if we have it on us, and then like the teachers, they just like sometimes when we're working they're on their phones or something. But like we just want like it fair, so like we can have our phones in our pockets, and as long as we're not on it and they see us. But like we just don't really think we need a cell phone caddy to put our cell phones in, like because we feel like they can trust us with our cell phones.
So then you bring this to the principal, and then you guys work together to develop the policy, the actual cell phone policy that's going to be used in the school.
Yeah.
Okay.
did you already bring that one to them, or you're in the process of bringing that to them?
We're in the process.
Okay.
And then I think you mentioned that you feel like this has really helped have student voice be heard. So is there, you guys meet every Tuesday, so how do you meet with the administration? Do you invite them to the meetings, or?
We do have, after school things with them. Like after school, we're having a meeting with Mr. Coleman.
I can speak to that. We just got our group together, so we're still in the beginning stages, because I wanted them to get to know the school a little bit more since 7th graders are so new. I didn't want to roll out the applications week 1. So we've had 2 weekly meetings now, where we've just started to brainstorm these ideas. Tomorrow, Sam Coleman will be helping to facilitate a leadership training for our students. And then our Dean of Students attends or is planning on attending a few of our meetings. I am in contact with the PTO for SIS, and they're also planning on attending a few of our meetings. So getting a lot of different voices in.
Can I ask how you guys communicate what you're doing to your fellow students? I know you've only had 2 meetings, so how do you talk to your friends, or how will you talk to the rest of the SIS students about the things you guys are working on?
Well, I'm guessing just for me, I will talk to my friends and see if they have any problems and like ask them what they want to change, and then I will bring that to the meeting and like suggest it and like see what they have to say about that, and then I will ask like other people at my school, and then I will bring that, just like give them like Rose said, just give them voice, and like so they can be like even though they're not in the student advisory council, like they can still be like in it in a way.
To add on to that, I think, is it once a month that?
Once a quarter.
Once a quarter, yeah. Once a quarter, we have a student council meeting where anyone is able to attend, and they can bring up issues that they wanted to like talk about. And so it's not just the student advisory council who's like bringing up all these things, because we want to get like a bunch of different people's opinions.
So I'm curious, we have meetings with high school students where the board members meet with high school students. So I'm wondering whether a Tuesday meeting, or maybe at that student council meeting, if it would be okay if we added, if we came and listened or talked to you guys. Because I do think, we have our student representatives, and even though they're high schoolers, they're representatives of the students. And so it'd be interesting if that's something that we can kind of plan to hear what other ideas you guys have and what other things that you think we should know about. So perhaps we can be in touch with you about that.
I'd just like to commend how focused you are on creating change, and I definitely hear that you're doing the fun activities, the social activities, making sure that it's a climate that everyone can thrive in, and I applaud all that. But I especially applaud your wanting to question policies and make sure your voice is added. Now, you spoke a little bit about asking for more support, particularly around capstone projects, but then also around like the forward tests and other types of examinations. Could you explain a little bit more of what types of things the school could provide to create a better atmosphere?
Just probably like more details, cause like they only tell us a couple things about the projects and like the testing, just like have it like make it sound more interesting, and like make it sound like it's something that we should have fun doing and like want to do, because like it's like helping us in a way.
So this is for 8th graders only, right? Or
No.
7th and, okay, sorry, I misunderstood. So previously the student advisory board was 8th graders, and part of their role was to kind of mentor the 7th grade, okay. So I guess my question is sort of if that dynamic is still also partly at play, where 8th graders are kind of helping support 7th graders rather than, I think the intent last year, I remember, was sort of to get rid of like the hazing kind of situation where, so I'm just curious if that's been kind of, part of the 8th graders' approach to kind of share the school more with 7th graders and to make them feel more at home.
Yeah, part of what I think is cool about like joining the student council and student advisory council thing into one is everyone's like equals, and it's not that we don't mentor them, it's just we're all expected to weigh in, and I think that's like a really cool concept because it makes them feel like not as small, I guess. I know when I was in 7th grade, it was like the 8th graders were kind of scary. So.
Awesome. We'll have fun.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Let us know what we can do for you.
As we were finishing up the schematic design process, you had those floor plans documents available at the last meeting. We want to also follow up with a budget check periodically throughout our design process, so that's what tonight is about. So posted for your materials were the budget documents, and so I'll have Dylan and Andre go through that and just answer any questions that you have where we are right now.
Great, thank you. So in your board packet, you have the first sheet that's the referendum budget breakdown. And this has 3 columns. So the 3 columns are kind of the stages we went through so far. So pre-referendum was the first column. And again, that has all their big buckets and how we got to the referendum dollars. The second column is post-referendum, where we actually took the big, large buckets that were for addition or renovation of a room or bathrooms. We stripped out all the fees and the contingencies and got to construction costs, and then items that are by the owner, which is like asbestos abatement, all the items below. So you can see the separation there. Now the third column is our SD budget. So this is from where we're at right now with the SD drawings, and we estimated to this point to make sure we're on track and pleasantly here to report that we're on track with schedule and with budget. So this is kind of a good breakdown to show you exactly where we're at for these items, and you'll see this going forward too when we get another design development budget and then forward on to construction documents. So this is kind of the format you'll be able to see. Is there any questions on this page so far?
So, I guess my first question is about the powerhouse. Estimated originally at 4 million, and now we're at 132,000. So what happened there?
So
That's great, but.
Yeah, so with this budget, we did have to switch around some scope of work. So the powerhouse was at a higher number. That includes some site work. So now that site work went to the general campus. And so the way we break down scope of works, and you can see in the next package that has all the breakdowns, we try to put those pieces to where they should belong. So some of the site work that we had around the powerhouse is gonna go to general campus site work for high school. And you can see in our breakdowns too, we don't lump them up as a one bathroom model. We break it up to trade packages. So there's gonna be tile, there's gonna be flooring, plumbing, HVAC.
So can you what does site work mean? I guess I'm not sure if I.
Asphalt paving, stormwater retention, curb and gutter, sidewalks, grading, kind of earthwork.
So it went from being kind of allocated to the powerhouse in particular to the
In
high
that
school
bucket,
more
yes.
general. Okay, so
Yep.
it was just, the budget ended up staying obviously within
Yep.
$6,000 of the original estimate, $7,000. So some of this is just moving some of the costs around, but did some of the things also come in under budget in a way that then allowed for different, I guess, is that in the detailed one?
Yeah, it is. There's a little bit of fluctuation between the two, and again, it kind of flushes out. But we did have to move some items around, so some of the food service stayed into high school, some of the, I'm trying to think, what are the other big ones that we moved around that kind of felt and went to a better category?
Right, so specifically the arena, PE, North Gym, and SHS pool. So you'll see down at the lower, as you move further down the list, you'll see that the arena building all of a sudden jumped from, I guess, at 1.9 million to 3.9. But now, a lot of this goes back to how they're being reflected on the documents themselves. So the PE arena building and that entire structure is now being documented on one set of documents. So all of that scope got lumped together as one scope project, if you will. So that's why, those two combined back pre-referendum, you know, arbitrarily, there was a separation between the arena and the PE North Gym SHS pool. Now that's become one building that we're focusing on, so all of that scope just gets lumped together. So that's why you'll see it's in the arena building, but it's basically, essentially at the same budget. So that's where we're starting to organize the estimates as it aligns to the documents at, 6 months from now, how they'll go out for bid.
So
If
it's
that makes a
prepa-
little more sense.
So it's preparing the bidding construction documents that we will have.
Right.
So that's the transition from kind of the pre-referendum, post-referendum work to the actual documents that will be put out for bid. So that's where we are right now, beginning that. So that's somewhat of the just recategorization, if you will.
Andre, can
Like-
you expand on your comment about trade packages and it's based on the contractor that would be doing the work?
Right.
And so the painter is not the same guy that's going to be putting the asphalt down. So the
Right, so
painter
you're organizing
only
the-
cares about his
Yep.
painting package, and the site work guy cares about his asphalt package or whatever that is, and that's how the buckets are shifting.
Yeah, pre-referendum, we had, to decide on what was prioritized and what we're gonna go for ADA, security. There are buckets of many trades, so when we bid it, architects develop a bid package, drawings for like administration building, but we're gonna have bid packages that show the earthwork contractors will bid earthwork, existing conditions, which is demolition, concrete, masonry. That's how they're gonna bid it, that's the trade packages, cause that's what the contractors will actually bid for. They won't look at, I'll take a look at just the bathroom, we're gonna have them bid the entire building, kinda like the arena and the pool area, that's gonna be one package, a set of documents. And you can see the lakefront, EEC that got moved up into the Lake Bluff package. So Lake Bluff will be one document with the EEC, same with Atwater and EEC. So that's why those budgets are in one bucket right now.
Okay, so
Yeah.
just for my clarification, maybe I'm missing something. You said we try to do it by trade, right?
Yep.
So does it take into consideration that, and we're using the same contractors for that trade, is that correct, or? So, painters as an example, are they ever gonna be conflicted on priorities so that what they should have been doing in one building, they need to do in another, but because that building got delayed?
So schedule-wise, we're not doing this all at once, cause it'd be
Right.
impossible, so it
Right.
would put a strain on the trades that are local or outside of Milwaukee. So
They're
we're
building on they're bidding on the whole thing, right?
Yeah, they will bid,
Okay.
they could bid on Lake Bluff, Atwater. We're gonna have a bid package that goes out for the elementaries first, and then there will be a
Okay.
bid form, they can bid on one building, two buildings, both at the same time. But we'll also qualify the bidders too, to make sure they're not gonna be taxed if they don't have the manpower or the facilities to actually do that amount of work in that amount of time. So we definitely wanna qualify that.
So most likely a contractor, a painter would give a discount if he got both Lake Bluff and Atwater.
Yep.
However, if it's a smaller, more local painter that only had the capacity to do one, that still allows
Okay,
more
that's what I
local
was-
contractors
that's
to
what I was
bid,
thinking. Okay.
but you're still getting the best numbers.
Right. Still wanna make it competitive, but give the opportunity to have
Right.
bids or multiple bids on every individual building.
I don't wanna dwell on this, but you nonchalantly said changes to food service at SIS. Given that those changes are causing an addition at Lake Bluff, can you detail that a little bit? Well, you're talking about SHS food service changes.
No,
that
no
aren't
changes,
happening?
just the way we had budgeted. The budget is in here for food service for SIS, HS.
Okay,
Mhm.
so we're not changing the plan as to what was originally
No,
targeted?
no.
No,
Okay.
it's the.
Just the budgeting side,
transition.
yeah.
Just the budgeting?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And another example of that, Peru, is like towards the end of it, when we started to really focus in on what the best solution was for the bathroom situation, for instance. And all of a sudden, we said, okay, maybe it makes more sense to, instead of tearing into the bathrooms here at the admin building to make them ADA accessible, let's just add unisex bathrooms, or family bathrooms at every floor. At that time, we just threw in an allowance per bathroom, so that included plumbing, tile, painting, ceilings, so several different scopes of bid in one, I guess if you will, allowance for doing that comprehensive work. So now what we're doing is peeling all of those individual trades into the appropriate buckets.
Okay. And one of the things that we've talked about, on the board, and this is now in here, is what is being called an owner's rep allowance. And so, Brian, can you talk, I had asked you to talk to Marta and come up with a proposal for that, so can you talk about that?
Yeah, so Marta and I had talked, and so she felt that between the two of us, with our experiences, that we wouldn't necessarily need an owner's rep to blanket like the entire process, from design to bidding process or anything like that, and that would usually come out as like a full percentage of the project. What we feel that that support that we would need from an owner's rep would be specifically around change orders, so things that might come back as significantly different than we had originally planned, and would want another set of eyes on that. And so what we could do is just have an arrangement with an owner's rep that would be kind of a as needed, if you will, be an hourly rate, kind of a consultant that we could bring in when that would come up, or if that comes up. So we just, threw in a number of $25,000 as an estimate over the length of these projects that we could, that we would just allocate out of this budget. So that's what we would propose. Again, it's certainly a board decision, and we'll administer accordingly. But that's what's in there right now. If that number were to change, either go down or get bigger, then that's something we would need to adjust, in our budget. So certainly, I think that it would be, if we were to get bigger, then we would need to take a look at projects, because that is part of our referendum numbers.
Yes, thanks for that clarification. I think a lot of us had that question. I'm a bit concerned that when we first started discussing owner's rep, which seemed ideally to be a great idea, the cost was significant, and we were advised by folks that had done it to kind of follow this model. My concern is still, both of you have full-time jobs that require a tremendous amount of attention, and this whole project is going to require, I think, more than $25,000 could cover. I just wonder if that estimate isn't too low, and might need to be adjusted based on the fact that the original numbers we were looking at for owner's reps were, I don't know if it was like 1% of.
It is 1%.
1%
For like, if
of-
you go for the whole project.
For the whole project, which would be significant.
Yeah, so that would be the difference, is that like in the 1% category, that would be essentially covering us from now through the end of the project. So
Right.
we were just estimating on, change orders shouldn't come up very often, if at all, but if they do, so that was just a conservative estimate on if they would, the amount of money we would need to spend in that, essentially consulting fees, as we would help, get some assistance in working through that. So, yeah, I mean, again, that's a board conversation. So, I mean, we're committed to being able to do the work, and we know it's gonna be a lot of work. Marta's worked through this before in her previous district, so she understands, the day-to-day of that. We will be involved in the bidding process directly, and so, yeah, I mean, that's where that's in our conversation, that's where we're at, so.
My inclination would be to ask for this to just be a separate agenda item in our next meeting, to have a really fuller discussion about it. I appreciate the proposal. I just think I share some of the, I'm leaning toward, wanting more than what you described, like more than just somebody looking at change orders, because I think what I'm interested in somebody independent having oversight over kind of goes beyond change orders. It would include things like if we're going to, somehow formalize like our expectations as far as, prioritizing minority and women-owned businesses, if we're gonna prioritize local businesses, like I just wanna make sure that somebody is looking back and saying, okay, this is how this should happen, and it is happening. And I feel like, yes, we did hear from some people who said we didn't really need that owner's rep in retrospect, but then I've heard from other people anecdotally, like I've heard balancing anecdotes basically. So I would like to just bring it up at our next meeting and look at maybe,
multiple options, like 3 options, you know, small, medium, large kind of commitment. And then with that, little bit better of a sense of like to what degree that would impact our projects, like what would be the logical things then to remove, or what, you know, what the cost not only in dollars, but like the opportunity cost, like what then do we give up? But you know, I've heard in terms of like construction projects, just that somebody like this is more than worth the money. And you know, I have no doubt that you and Rita totally have, you know, the experience and intention to oversee this, so it's not a matter of that. It's like, I would just rather like free you guys up to not, you know, bear that, so, because there's just so many other things going on. So it's not a matter of not necessarily trusting you, but it would just be good to have, I think, a third party. So anyway, I already made a new agenda item, sorry. I didn't mean to talk for so long, but that's where I would like to go, is just bring it up next time. Sorry.
Yeah, I think an agenda item to discuss it is warranted, especially if you need board approval to do it, and if this is gonna take money away from other pockets, in the budget, I'm interested in that. I do think that I wanna protect tax dollars and the work, and so, I think we just need to discuss this a little bit more, and with the realization that if we're gonna do it, we should make the plan to do it and implement that in our process, so.
Yeah, and I
that's
can
a
bring
big-
back, I think I spoke to 4 other districts that had used owners reps. So I can bring back all of that kind of information that I got from them about what their, you know, what their experience was. So different kinds of projects, different levels of, you know, so, but I have that information that I think I shared a few months ago, but I'll bring it back and we can talk. I don't think had made a decision at that point. I think we had decided, given the class that we knew we weren't gonna use an owner's rep this year. That I think was a decision that was made from that conversation, so I can bring that back.
That was actually gonna be my question was, would part of that discussion be, do you feel that we always need an owner's rep throughout the whole project? Because I was thinking, well, for this year, I wouldn't wanna pay anybody to do that, but I would also wanna, but then part of me also says, well, wait a second. An owner's rep would also be able to help look at the things that you're talking about, which is, are we doing the same, going through the procurement process the way we want to? But also, that aside, are we actually really picking the right vendors regardless of what the reason is? So, and I'm not a construction person, I don't think any of us are, and I know you're a superintendent. But, so I would think I would feel more comfortable if we at least understood that more.
I would,
Okay.
and I think what I remember is that we felt like getting to the schematic designs, we
Yeah.
felt like that's
Right.
fine, but once we get to construction, we were more out of our depth and feeling like, okay, at that point. The other, so I had like one really
Can
definition question, go
I
ahead.
just comment on that just before? So it's good, it's just important for us to be able to talk about that now, because even though we might not bring somebody on for, you know, another year, we can lay out the process, but we really need to know in the next couple of months is what direction and to what extent, as best as we can estimate, that we're gonna bring somebody on, because again, that will have a budget impact, and as we're putting together the construction documents, we have to make sure that if we're taking things out, like, we need to be able to do that now before the bidding process, so that's just some of the urgency around it, so, sorry.
Well, that's okay, super specific to this document, sorry, you guys are like,
No, it's okay.
what does existing conditions mean? What is that?
Demolition.
Oh.
Yeah,
It's
existing
just a
condition.
construction term
For-
on the way that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yep.
no, that's fine. That's a
Good question.
I was like, okay, you're just
It means you're looking at it.
$52,000 to
And reading it.
make it
Yeah.
exist, okay. And then the other question I had, I guess when I was thinking about, you know, getting this budget update, I understand now what we're getting, but, the question I had, I guess, for Brian is, or anybody is, for what has been actually paid for to date, do we have are we on track? Are we gonna get an update in terms of like what we've paid, I guess, just EUA to this point, or?
Yeah, Marta can provide that as part of our monthly, you know, part of our monthly budget check.
Okay.
So we can do that at the next meeting, that can be part of that.
Okay.
So besides design and engineering fees, site surveys, soil borings,
Some roofing work from the
some
district.
roofing work that the
direct
district
work.
did.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else would be on that list.
And that's all accounted for
Right.
in this particular account, so Marta's just got it running.
Okay, I mean,
That's-
I'm just generally, like, is it running in line with what we expected?
Yeah,
Is anything?
yeah, there hasn't been any surprises.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Any further questions? So can you remind me then the timeline, so we're gonna have a community, update, next week, Wednesday?
Yep.
So will this be one of the things that we're able to share with, not like the detailed budget about existing?
All
conditions?
positive, we're on track and on budget, yes.
Great,
On schedule.
on schedule, okay.
Thanks, Teresa.
So yeah, I'll bring back the ownership conversation for the next meeting in November. Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The website portal that is around questions and concerns. So just wanted to be able to provide you just the executive summary and just some of the feedbacks. We've had seven contacts up to this point. And again, that was communicated out through various measures. So not a flood of inquiries, but certainly everything that we've gotten in has been obviously important to that person, and making sure that we not only take that feedback, but are able to get back, either make corrections, that are identified, or just answer people's questions. So the contacts that come out then are, Sam gets all of the emails that come in through the website, so he takes a look at those, and then there's specific categories that people check as part of the identification of the question or concern, and that gets routed to a particular either building or district level. So like through the rec, there's a question about the rec department, so that goes to Jody and Sam. Jody replies to that, and so we have that, all those responses recorded. So we've got a running list that just funnels into a spreadsheet, so we'll be able to just do a monthly, I'll do a monthly check-in on how that's going. I think we had said we're gonna come back in February, just looking at kind of the breadth of where we're at, how it's being used, and that type of thing. But, so I don't know, Sam, did you give any other?
Yeah, just to highlight what we have in the executive summary, just all the inquiries that have been submitted through the portal. There's an immediate response that is generated, and then again, a faculty member responsible for the area of the concern or inquiry responds typically within 24 hours. So to date, all of the inquiries have been responded to. As Dr. Davis mentioned, copied and included on all of the initial inquiries or concerns, and then the responses as well. The inquiries around academic interests range from forward exam scores to the ESL programs available for students in the elementary school, and then other inquiries range from lunch accounts to the ticket prices for high school football games. And then there was one after-school inquiry regarding the recreation for basketball programming. So the portal seems to be helpful, and it appears to be an opportunity for community members and parents to reach out. Again, the reason why I'm copied on all of the inquiries and responses is the parents who came together around the creation of this portal had some concerns, mainly around equity being addressed at the school level or district level, and just ensuring that there were multiple eyes being on that. So that is my reason for being copied on that, and I think, again, this is a great idea and a great opportunity for communication to be shared about the concerns, and then I also think being able to share that out here at the board for community members also allows for a greater sense of transparency for what community members might be raising as concerns, and then our responses to those concerns.
I'm sort of glad to see that there were almost as many community members as there were parents and guardians and family members with inquiries, that at least people in the community have acknowledged this is a way to get their questions answered if perhaps they don't know where else to start those inquiries. So that's kind of nice to see.
Yeah, and that's certainly a group that we have difficulty reaching sometimes, through our Infinite Campus Blast. So that's why we continue to appreciate the village manager's memo as a way to be able to get the information out. It's been really, really helpful. So.
Hey, Sam, or I don't know if this is for Sam or both of you, or, as we start getting more traction on the volume of these concerns concerns. Is there gonna be a way that you might be able to track what the general remediation category was too? So, and the reason I'm asking is because sometimes it might be helpful to see if we're consistent in the way we're handling the same type of issue as well. You don't have volume right now, but I would just ask that we keep that in mind going forward too. We're gonna learn as we go through this, the first time we're doing it, but, it's one of the things that I think would be valuable for the team to have insight into that too.
Absolutely, sure.
When's the next point at which we sort of stop and say, like, should we change this? Is it working?
Yeah, I mean,
We currently have it
We were
saying
looking at
coming back in February,
February.
like, cause then it would have been like 4 months-ish, right?
yeah, a semester.
Of implementation to see. I mean, I think, is there a way for, I know that the parents that worked with Brian to get this started, I'm sure would give feedback, but if there's other ways for people to give feedback on things that aren't working, that I think would be helpful as well. I don't know if there's a, I don't know if you'd use that particular site to say, hey, the website's not good, but, you know, like, or just another way to say, like, this doesn't, it's missing categories, it's like not capturing something that's really important, so.
Yeah, so one thing that we have committed to, is to maintain communication and just an ongoing, dialogue with the group that generated this idea and saw it through fruition. And so that ongoing feedback has been important. We have been in touch with several of those, members as well. And so I just think while we, and Dr. Davis, I guess I'll yield to you to correct this, but while we want to hold off on making any changes until we see how this works through February, we do have that opportunity to collect feedback.
As it goes.
Yep.
Yeah, and if there's obvious things that, you know, we can change it as we're going. But we do wanna have a pause point, just generally reflecting.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
And then, I wanna know, like, I feel like the end of chapter grades and like the end of semester grades should give me some indication of where things are going. And so I guess I just wanna, like, is there something else that we should be getting, right? So that we know where we are before July. Right, that gives you an indication in January, like, hey, these are things that have not been covered. Or I don't even know, like the skills, or there's something we need to address. And if it's not the grades that they're getting in the report card, then what is it? That wasn't a rhetorical question.
No, I'm sorry.
I mean, what are the things that we could be getting?
Yeah, and I mean, it's certainly something that we can talk about. I think the difficult part really truly is, and as you look at grades and you look at proficiency on forward, where I want to be somewhat careful is that if those are exactly aligned, we're going to struggle as, I'm trying to put this in a positive spin. So if, for instance, we're still above state average on our forward reading scores. So if we were to say, well, 55.6% of our students should be getting a C, that's gonna be.
Right, but I guess what I'm trying to figure out is how is it that, students who are doing apparently well every, in the daily math or English or whatever, and just in general, right? Would then have poor board exam scores. I mean, I think the suggestion, right, is either that the board exam is testing something completely different than what we're teaching, which I feel like is not the case.
Right.
Based on alignment. So that's the part I guess for me the difficulty is to not wait. I mean, it's not even waiting, but like not be able to, I know we have so much data on a daily basis about our students. And so to say that data is not informing what this is gonna look like, I think is just really frustrating.
Right.
And so that's the piece that I feel like needs to be either, like if it's not gonna align, I guess I just wanna know why. But then what are those two pieces of data telling me? My student, like I have a student who's getting an A and then is basic on the board exam, what does that mean?
Right.
Right? what could that possibly mean?
I think the other possibility is that what is laid out on paper is aligned, but what's actually happening on the ground is not. And that's, I mean, the hardest thing to pinpoint, right?
Right, yes, and I will say, and I'm not by any means, but we also have to understand that a forward assessment is one day, whereas a grade is an amalgamation of work. So it is entirely possible that there's a misalignment between what we're seeing and how a student performs on that one day. So I do wanna at least raise that piece up.
I totally believe
Yep.
that to be the case, right? Because that's 4 hours versus
Right.
180 hours, right? In the
Right.
classroom, or whatever, right? So, right, but I mean, I guess what I wanna know is like, if we were to start asking for more information, like every couple of months, like, or when report cards come out, is that gonna give us an indication of how things are gonna end up? And it doesn't sound like it is, right? So what is gonna give us an indication in January and February about things that need to be addressed prior to, I don't remember when the board exam is given, May, or,
Right.
June? That's the piece that I think, to me, like the student piece of it that needs to be addressed.
Right.
Because I do think, I appreciate that, I think engaged, like all those practices that teachers are doing, I'm sure are positive, will have positive effects. I don't see why they would harm, right, the outcomes. But that, like, without knowing what the data looks like, it's hard for us to be able to say anything about that.
Right. And I will say from an elementary standpoint, that's somewhat where our data-informed practices within that first professional development cycle are going, really are identify the indicators that are going to tell you how kids are doing so that we can get ahead of those pieces rather than behind them. I think it's worthwhile, like our math, to say, so we've been at these indicators for a while. Are they really truly our best indicators, or now that you've experienced them for a while, is there something that you're saying, you know what, honestly, this indicator over here is telling me more information than what the indicator that we told you 4 years ago would have told us. So I do think it's worthwhile for us to at least potentially enter that conversation of what are the measures that are actually getting us ahead of identifying students who are struggling.
Yeah, I mean, because when I look at the grades, right, for percent of students that are C or above, I mean, there's like essentially flat or some positive changes, right? And so, again, I guess one of the things that I'd like you to come back to us with is some way of like us understanding how both of those things can be true, right?
Okay.
That one group has, goes up, whatever, 15% in terms of their, their grades in that class, and then goes down 20% in their board exam.
Oh, and it wasn't exactly the same trending, but it was similar in the math.
Yeah.
Math dropped in both, right?
But
The
math
grades
was
it-
like, math is a much smaller drop.
Right, in the
Yeah,
grades,
yeah.
yeah, but it was still, the scores were a much bigger drop in comparison to the grades.
Right.
Which also begs your question, what else could be a factor? Could it be how we're teaching it, or the minutes of instruction that you mentioned earlier, Tim? Particularly in those two subjects.
I think a good place to start as you continue with your conversations is laying out like what are the formative assessments that we have at the end of each unit or at periodic times, laying those out, what skills are measured, what knowledge is measured, and then how does that align with the end of the year test,
Right.
with the forward exam, and then what alignment do we have, what misalignment do we have, and how do we make sure that we can strengthen those formative assessments. So we should have those indicators. By the time we get to March, we should have a really good idea to make a prediction about what's gonna happen in the board exam in May. I mean, that's a process that you guys can continue to work through. And then I think that's something that we can bring back in February to like, how did that lay out? And then what are we doing where do we see those gaps?
I don't want you guys to take this the wrong way about teaching the Ford exam. That's not what I'm asking this next question, but is there any way to say, these are the questions on the exam, this is what it's asking, where do we cover, just out of curiosity, where do we cover that in the curriculum? Because that might give us,
Yeah, that's the other.
Yeah.
So
Alignment.
when do we see that though?
Yeah, so, to the standpoint of, can we see the questions on the test that they're gonna ask? No, but we can see samples of questions.
Oh, okay.
or past questions that they have asked. To be honest, we've not done a deep question analysis of the forward. And so if that's a direction we wanna go, we certainly can. But I have not instructed our staff to do a
So I was
deep,
wondering, I
in-depth
was assuming it
analysis
would take
of our
some
forward
time.
assessment.
But it just seems like if we're questioning everything about that, how do we know what it's testing?
Well, it should
That's
all
the alignment.
align
Well,
to
it's
the
not
Common
right.
Core.
It should be
right?
testing the
Right.
Common Core state standards.
On paper, they all
Right.
align. One,
Yes, sir.
last and probably actually least, thing, it's just prompted by that student comment earlier, I think, maybe there's room to communicate to students differently about what standardized testing is and isn't.
Mhm.
Like, I don't, to Janet's point, like, I don't want any kid to be like, oh, did you hear we all messed up last year or something? Like, I guess I wanna make sure that we're both consistent and, that we're not just treating the test as a throwaway, but we're also not like, giving it undue weight. I guess just looking for a good balance and some sort of message about why are we taking this test, that, isn't super serious and weighty, but also isn't like, that just kinda gets at like why you should get enough sleep the night before the test and what this tells your teacher and what it doesn't tell your teacher. And then a sense of like, cause sometimes as an individual student, you're so focused on your own performance, like emphasizing, okay, like this is for us to look at what systemically is going on in our school district, so it's not so much like we're worried about, you, and I know some of that stuff is in like the letter that goes home to parents, but it sounds like based on what kids are saying, like that they're not making that connection, and maybe, teachers are, inadvertently communicating something different than we want the kids to go away with, and I get why they would kind of just wanna be like neutral about it, just like, oh, we're just gonna take this test, like, we're not gonna talk a ton about it, so maybe there needs to be a conversation about what we do say now, and then what, I guess if there's research around how you kind of approach the test, things you say or don't say to the kids that help them kind of do their best but not freak out about it. That might be helpful, and then just make, honestly, like, making it less of a drag, like make it as fun as it can be, like, and I'm again, like, think that it's gonna solve.
I feel like you haven't taken a computerized test.
Okay.
I'm just gonna throw
Let's
that out
not get
there.
into how I really like standardized testing, but, I really liked having those number 2 pencils, but I guess we don't do that anymore, sad. And I just wanna be clear, like, I don't think that's what's to blame for the drop, or that it's gonna solve any real problems, but it just sounds like there's an opportunity based on that student comment.
The value in your comment too might also address, if you're able to figure that, the magic in getting the kid excited about to take an exam. You also have, I think, there's probably a measurable population of those children who take those exams knowing that to them they don't matter, right? So, if you have a kid that is very grade-centric and they know that this test does not matter to their grade, then there's gotta be a different way to communicate some of that too. I'm not saying that's the solution, but to your point, if you would communicate it maybe a little bit differently in addition to all the other things that you're doing, that might move the needle too, because I think that's part of what he was saying earlier, right?
Yeah, I could see it like tying to the, like, we are crew and not passengers kind of idea, like, this is about the group, and it's not,
Right.
necessarily about your grade.
Right.
But it still matters.
Pablo, did you have anything? Sorry, I feel like we didn't.
Oh, no, I had, just, you kind of, talked about strategies and things. We saw some significant dips, especially among, from K-5 through 6th grade among our African-American students and running records and also our Latino students. And, yeah, I think the alarm bell's been rung, and we know that sadly prisons are built based on reading scores of kids in 5th grade. Predictions are made. 4th grade, third grade. Yeah, so I mean, I could ask similar questions that my colleagues have asked in other ways, but just echo their concerns and happy to hear what your plan is currently.
Okay. So I guess I will, schedule to hear back from you in probably first or second meeting in February. Unless there's the other things that come up, I guess, in between now and then. So, all right, I have a motion and a second to accept this not monitoring report as failing to make progress. Any further discussion? No? All right, all in favor of approval, say aye. Aye? Motion carries. Thanks. All right, next up, Marta is going to talk to us about financial planning. So I will take a motion to approve this report.
So moved.
I'll take a second.
Second.
So, I feel like we made a lot of progress on the updates for this at our board retreat, but, this monitoring report was scheduled to come to this meeting, so I don't know if people have any questions for her on this report.
I do. I'm just not clear. So when we vote to accept the budget, so if we're just doing the monitoring report for
The budget's
financial
separate.
planning.
Yeah,
Got it.
correct.
Okay, sorry. I was like panicking for a second. Okay.
Marta, can you explain a little bit more about the budget deficit because of new requirements for IDEA?
So the information is embargo. I can only share the details why. This information will be coming to you in the next few months, but the rules have changed for IDEA funds and how we can spend it.
Can
So
you
we had
remind us
to-
what IDEA funds are?
Do we?
Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. It's
Oh.
special education funds.
Federal special ed.
Federal funds.
Federal special education funds that we get from,
We get from the federal government, it streams through the states, and then we get the state funding for special education specifically.
It's a flow-through grant that comes from federal government to DPI and then to the school district. So the rules have changed, so we have to take some of the money and designate it for a different purpose, money that we used for salaries and things of that nature that we're not able to spend this year, and that's all I can really tell you.
wait, so I guess I'm
IDEA
confused,
is-
why would that information be embargoed in terms of process? Wait, maybe Julie, you should come up here. I mean, I can understand why they can't tell us, like, maybe the exact, like, budget, like, I don't know, even like what monies are moving, but like the process itself is embargoed? Like how we're getting the money?
Well, we receive a certain amount of funding based on student count each year.
Okay.
And so essentially, this year's funding, there are other factors that are interfering with our ability to get the total amount of money that we normally receive for purposes of spending on our special education programs specifically, and that part of it is what's embargoed. There's a percentage of that money that's being reallocated for purposes that we cannot speak publicly about at this time.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, the IDEA program, even though it's a federal program, is never adequately funded.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
So, the federal government and the state are now tying our hands by not funding the federal requirements, and now the state is essentially doing the same, from what I'm hearing.
It's a little more complicated than that, and I think if we wanted to have further conversation, we could do that maybe in closed session at some point in the future, to kind of further explain why, if you're looking for more information.
I'm sort of curious if this is gonna cause a budget deficit. I guess I do want more information.
Yeah, I think we definitely need to know, you know, what the impact, I mean, I guess it's, you know, vague enough at this point for us to not understand, I guess, fully like the budget implications.
But we need to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, on board indicator 3, the one about, budget projections for the next 4 years, being brought to the board, do you have a sense of generally what month that might be coming, just to bookmark it?
It's gonna be either December or January.
Oh, okay.
Any further questions?
No, because this one is really cheap.
Right.
Right.
I know, that's why. Okay. Okay, so I have a first and second motion. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor of approval of this monitoring report, say aye. Aye. Motion carries, 5-0. All right, and then now we have approval of the 2019-2020 original budget and levy. You don't have to stay up here, Julie. You look like you want to leave. So I guess we're gonna have to say something very specific. So I'm wondering if we should do the discussion first, and then we have to have the motion to approve the specific language, correct?
Can you do that?
Yeah, I mean, you should make the motion first and then have discussion
Okay, so we'll make the
about it.
motion, and then we'll have to come back and make another one.
If you
Yeah,
need
so I'll
to
make the
amend
motion
that.
for approval of the budget.
Which one?
No, just the 2019-2020 budget. I don't know, I mean,
I know what you mean.
should I read it,
I
like?
think officially you'd probably read one of them in, and then if you had to make an amendment to it after the discussion, then you'd come back and make that amendment.
Who's the treasurer now? I can get this long list of numbers.
Alright, am I making this motion?
Yes.
Okay, I move we approve the 2019-20 property tax levy, including $16,641,638 to the general aid, $455,348 to non-referendum debt, $275,000 to the capital expansion fund, $1,250,000 to the community education fund, $3,927,937 to referendum debt, $5,888 to prior year levy chargeback, to a total of $22,555,811 total tax levy for all funds, resulting in a $14.16 mill rate. Is that good?
Yes. And I will second that. Okay, so, we had asked Marta, like, we can discuss this now, to, provide us some background information about these particular numbers, and then talk about specifically the defeasance, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and let you talk about that.
So, as you know, our third Friday is completed and our final state aid was certified, so we're able to set our final budget and levy. In past, the district has levied additional funds to maintain the same mill rate, and in last few years, the mill rate was $13.88 per 1,000 of fair market value. In April, district passed $65 million construction referendum and $275,000 for capital maintenance. So prior to the referendum passing, I believe the communication was that estimated mill rate will be approximately $14.19 of $1,000 of fair market value. If the district does not levy additional funds in Fund 39, the mill rate would be $14.07. However, our recommendation is to levy the additional $150,000 to pay off the debt early, as well as to keep that mill rate steady. I think that would help the taxpayers for future, to make sure the mill rate stays pretty constant and not gonna have the up and downs. Per DPI, the district is allowed to levy additional funds in Fund 39. You can either set up a defeasance account for this purpose, or keep the money with the school district in a designated account for debt service. So the district levy additional $150,000 for that debt. The mill rate will be $14.16. The present value of savings for doing that is $10,054. And to set up a defeasance account is approximately $13,000, and that includes the legal cost as well as escrow agent and then accountant fee. So our recommendation is to levy the additional $150,000, but not to set up the defeasance account, but keep that money in a separate interest-bearing account that designated for debt service that will be used to pay off a future debt.
So I'm confused, the non-referendum debt is listed at $455, but you're saying levy $150? Where's the $150?
So there is two debts. Non-referendum debt is the $455,000, and then the referendum debt is the $3,927,000. So you actually are going to levy additional funds, the $150,000 for the referendum debt.
It's for the referendum debt, not the non-referendum debt. Is the difference in the dollar amounts.
Otherwise, it'd be
Can you see?
3.7 million.
Yeah.
Got it.
77.
Got it.
You said you're recommending the 14.16 over the 14.07. And one of the reasons is to maintain the mill rate for future. So are you saying from this point forward, you wouldn't expect, the idea would be you set it at 14.60 and then you're not expecting it to fluctuate in the future from there?
What I'm trying to avoid is to having dips, having 14.7 this year and next year going to, let's say, 14.20 and then down. It is not good for the taxpayers to see, not know what the mill rate is going to be. I think it's hard for families to budget. And you also are paying the debt early, so essence saving the taxpayers' money.
What was the savings from?
So the the present value is $10,054.
That would be the savings.
Today's dollars.
Right.
So
We're
That
doing
would
this,
have
levying
that.
this additional
Yeah.
$150,000.
Okay, so I'm
Of
trying-
referendum debt, not prior.
Right.
Wait, okay.
Yeah.
I think I was looking for that 450, at that 455, because I think in the past for defeasance, well, obviously, we didn't have the referendum. Okay. I mean, I guess by way of just discussion of the board, like, I don't see a tremendous amount of value in sort of that stable mill rate. I think we've talked about this before, so I think, the degree to which the property values change here and go up, that's predictable enough to the degree that everybody knows their tax bill for the most part is gonna go up every year, so I think, I tried to do the math here. I think like on the average house, it's like $100 if we didn't levy this additional amount. And everybody's tax bill is going up this year, so I would prefer to do the 1406. Is that right? 1407. And I think that $10,000 savings is negligible enough for us to just give a nod to the fact that the taxes are so much higher this year than last due to the referendum. We just give people a little bit of a break. That's where I'm leaning.
Can I ask about the state aid decreases that are, so it went down this year. Is that gonna be a trend that we should expect moving forward?
Shorewood is considered to be property wealthy school district, therefore it's very likely that you're gonna see a decrease in state aid.
Like a consistently higher decrease in state aid? Because my son, I think, I agree with Emily, I think our property values are probably gonna continue to rise. So I'm just trying to think about your comment about stability. I think if those two things continue to happen, right, our property values go up and the state aid goes down, then that is, I think, another factor that's going to then be impacting every year, right, in a negative way in some ways, right, our funding, I would think, right? And so.
It averages
well,
out over
or
like 3 or 5 years, right? Don't they do
a rolling average?
Rolling average?
Oh.
For state aid, like how they calculate it is based on our enrollment over like,
So
or property tax values?
The revenue limit is based on a 3-year enrollment
enrollment
average, but
average.
state aid is, there's a formula, and basically the state puts only so much money, and it's divided between all the schools depending on the property values. Some of the years, you know, you might see a little increase, but most likely you're gonna see decrease because of the property values in the area. So the difference between the two, mill rates is 9 cents per thousand of fair
Right.
market value.
Right.
I do understand we're talking about 9 cents, and I do in theory agree with the keeping the mill rate consistent. However, I think at 14-16, we're one of the highest mill rates in the state, I believe, based on the, what used to be the Public Policy Forum's
Yeah, that's right.
calculations. So that gives me pause, particularly in a year where we have asked and the voters have accepted the referendum, not knowing what other, and I'm not knowing that every other level of government is talking about increasing taxes from MMSD to the county to, you know, not knowing what the village is gonna do in terms of expenditures there. So I'm hesitant to approve the mill rate, even with the every common sense things that you've said this year. And that's hard, so I'm it's hard for me to say, but I do think that mill rate is higher than I'm comfortable with, just given all things being in consideration as we look to what we're asking of our community. And I think there are bigger texts, which is huger conversations to have about how we fund education and how we, in the village, fund what we are trying to do, other than property taxes. So at this point, I would agree with Emily that I would want to approve the lower mill rate for myself.
The other thing I think is important to note is that
Sure.
the level of defeasance is like not, I mean,
It's a really
that's
small.
it's a small amount, and it also doesn't affect program, you know, our education, right? So it's not like we're deciding to cut the teacher to give a tax break. It's like, we're gonna just pay our debt on time instead of, I can live with
I mean, I
that.
think that also, I think to your point, the process before was specifically because we knew we were gonna be taking on more debt, which is not a place we're at now. So, I think that's I think you both make really good points.
So just to be clear, before I say any other comments, would you please highlight or bullet in your mind, what the negatives are for accepting the 14.07 versus the 14.16?
What I've seen in past, when the mill rate goes up and it goes up substantially, the taxpayers get really upset versus having the mill rate more even from year to year.
So, but you're basing that on next year's, not this year's, right?
Right, going forward.
Yeah. Because every bone in my body at one point would have said the 14-16 as well, because of what she's talking about. But I think all of the points that you two have made, and some that you've agreed with as well, makes sense. It's kind of the ask behind it, right? You're asking for more. So I'm a little conflicted, but I think I would agree with Emily.
I'm just gonna say that I looked up mill rates. I don't know where this place is in Norris. But their mill rate's 52.41. So
it's a smaller.
they're not the highest.
It's
Oh,
smaller.
that's where there's like 10 houses.
Okay,
and then-
yeah, it's smaller.
Where is that?
I don't know, I've never heard of it.
And we're really rural then.
Yeah, it's a rural K-8.
So I had some just, you know, obviously we wanted to discuss the military, but then in terms of the, actual budget, there was just a couple, like, line items thing I was just curious about, if I can go through just a couple. So So I'm looking at Fund 10. There was a big jump in interest income from investments, and I was just wondering, like, what is that? And also, did we like do something different that accounts for that big jump?
Yeah, so from year to year, the interest rates are a little bit higher or lower. That obviously affects the school district. And we use a sweep account. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but it's basically an account that has a zero balance, and every day we transfer money to cover the expenses. So all the money always sits in an investment account. So we always earn interest and only make the transfer once a day to cover our expenses. So we don't have money sitting in a checking account. And I think that's a big part of it.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's fascinating, actually.
But so then that would explain how we went from, we essentially doubled our interest on that because, okay.
Interesting. Okay. And then this, maybe this is the idea thing that you can't talk about, but there was like a line item that's like state funding for other sources, and federal aid through DPI that both changed a bunch. Is that what you were touching on?
So IDEA funds are in Fund 27, and I think your question was regarding Fund 10.
Yeah.
So the other revenue from state sources went down, and the reason why is because we had safety grant last year, and it was just a one-time thing. That grant is done, so the revenues in that account went down. And the other question you had was federal aid through state. And as you see, in the last couple of years, we had a budget item, but we didn't have any revenues, and we don't expect any revenues this year. So I want to make sure that our budget is accurate.
Oh, so I was looking at federal aid through DPI lens. It's like number 73, and went from 81 to next year. The budget is like 47. So it just had.
So 78 federal aid through
73.
73.
Sorry, I didn't realize there was such a similar line.
So this is a grant that we received from DPI, and again, that grant was cut.
Oh, it was federal safety money, right? Okay, yeah, I remember that.
73 is a grant that we received. It's not a safety grant. It's a different grant that we received from DPI that amount decreased substantially. So the way sometimes DPI does the grants is they only get so much money, and based on that, they allocate it per school. So we really don't know how much money we're getting till the beginning of the school year. So now we just got a notification that that grant actually has decreased.
Okay. I'm still in the general fund, but under our expenses, there's a pretty big drop in budgeted for travel, and I just wondered, is there like a policy change, Brian, or Marta, like that we implement? I don't know. I'm just curious what.
Yeah, so there is no policy change at this time. This includes employee travel as well as athletics for students. So at this point, I had discussions with the high school about purchasing our own vehicle and not renting it, hoping to save money that way.
For athletic teams?
For athletic teams, and also, being used during the day for other students. So most likely this budget amount is gonna be, the actual amount is gonna be higher than what budgeted, but we are looking at it and hoping that we can actually decrease it to from what it was last year.
So like a bus, or?
No, more like a minivan.
So the majority of that travel is then for sports and recreation?
So that'll be a number we can bring back again as we're doing our monthly.
We
had vans.
You're just looking at another one?
So just,
Some, yeah, I mean, it'd be kind of
like
dedicated,
we just don't have enough. The vans that we have are utilized,
So
and
they're
a lot of times we have to rent a van to be able to accommodate other students.
Right.
Okay. The next line 36, the technology and software services is quiet. So like next year it's $156,000, but like a couple years ago it was like $11,000. I know we added like the locker for our Wi-Fi at the high school and I think in middle school. Is that along the lines of what we're paying for there, or what's?
So what this line is for software. district-wide, so instructional software as well as any other softwares. Just to give you an example, so this account is where we charge our Infinite Campus, where we charge Skyward, Frontline, which is the sub-calling software. We have library software that we also charge their school due. So we just want to make sure that even though it might be individual school budgets, they're charged the right account. So even though we had those software in the past, they could have been charged to different places. We just want to make sure we're consistent.
Oh, okay, so it's just a
Centralized.
allocation, I guess. Okay, that makes lots of sense. The next thing I wondered about, so under the general fund expenses, 71 says district insurance, and that's jumped quite a bit from a couple years ago. Is that our general liability insurance, or what kind of insurance?
So it's our general liability, property, and workers' comp. And the reason why it went up substantially last year was approximately $60,000. It was due to workers' compensation. So workers' compensation looks at the last 3 years of claims, and 3 years ago was a year that when you had a lot of workers' compensation claims. Currently, your MOD, which is your experience, is a 1.33, so anything over 1 is pretty high. So far this year, we have been pretty good in terms of not having workers' compensation claims. If that continues, we're definitely going to see a decrease next year. But because of what happened 3 years ago, this is why you received this big increase.
Okay. And then the special projects fund, is that like the fund where like the turf was funded out of, or what's sitting in there?
So this is actually a special education transfer.
Oh,
As
okay.
we mentioned earlier, special education, there's a lot of mandates that you can get IDEA grants, and then some of the expenditures are funded at 26%. The rest of it has to come from general fund, because by law, you have to zero out Fund 27 every year.
Got it. Okay, that makes tons of sense. Okay, sorry, a couple more. In the special ed funds, the travel expenses there, is that just like for Julie's office, or what travel?
This is actually for students. We have designated for student travel.
Oh, for like busing them to and from school, or like field trip expenses, or?
I can look into it, but I know it's the account that
It's
is
just
used by
students.
students.
Oh, okay. I was just curious.
Is that 34 you're talking about?
Yes.
Because that dropped tremendously.
Yeah.
Item 34,
Yeah.
general fund. The budget is for 86,000. Last year we spent 242,000. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, okay, then I was asking about software, but you just answered that already. Supplies and materials just a lot higher. I just didn't know, like, was there an unmet need before, or we buying something big that's new?
Are you asking for special education?
Yes,
supplies?
I am 41.
Yeah, so
supplies.
it's really based on the needs of students.
Okay.
Depending on what the
So it
needs
just
are, the supplies
depends.
budget might go up or down.
Got it, that makes sense. I think that would be it for me. Do we need to then okay, so we're gonna
We'll
come
come
back
back. I have
to this
one
one,
more.
but make a new motion? Okay.
Yeah, you can make it. Hold on, I had another
Oh,
one. I was checking them off as you went.
Thank you.
But there was one that I might have missed, and you might have asked it,
Oh, okay.
actually. Because I had highlighted a lot of the same ones that you did apparently. Line 35 in the general fund on expenses for
Communication.
Yes,
Oh.
communication. So there wasn't much change in the budget from last year's to this year. But if you look at the budget from 17-18, we budget a little bit higher. We spend almost that in that year. Then we budget a little bit lower where we're budgeting this year for last year, but we still spent the same amount we did the year before. Where do we get those savings from that this year, do you think?
It's not savings, it's just paying out of the right bucket. So we talked about it earlier,
Perfect.
moving money to the right location.
That's another
right.
example.
That makes sense on
Yes, those were the ones that I mean, I had, yeah, okay. So we, let's see.
Call the
Yeah.
question?
Yes, well, yes, and then I guess, yeah, we'll call the question for the original, motion that was, so,
All in favor of the $14.16 mill rate?
yeah, all in favor, say aye. All
What?
opposed,
Nay.
Nay.
say nay. All right, so, nay, so it doesn't pass, so now we will take a new motion. Do you have it in front of you?
I can.
I thought I just passed it to you.
Yeah.
No, it's the other one.
Without, yeah,
Oh.
that would have been like making an amendment to that,
Got
but
it,
if you
got it.
just wanna go, just gotta read through each one,
You just have to reread it.
yeah, just reread it with the 1407 numbers there.
Okay. So the motion is for, property tax levy, of $16,641,638 in the general fund, $455,348 in non-referendum debt, $275,000 to the capital expansion fund, $1,250,000 into the community education fund, $3,777,937 in referendum debt, $5,888 in prior year levy chargeback, for a total levy of $22,405,811, and a mill rate of $14.07.
I'll take a second.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? No, this was really helpful, Martha, thank you.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, we have a superintendent's consent agenda, I will take a motion. Second?
No, second, sorry.
Sorry.
Did you just make a motion?
All in
did.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I didn't say it very
Motion
well.
carries 5-0. So welcome to our new student advocate, James Rice, who I am assuming is taking over for Chris.
For Chris Hill, yeah, who was here with us last
Yeah, yeah.
time. James was our girls' basketball head coach last year, so he's continuing in that role, so we're just able to bring him on during the day, so.
And what's an online learning teacher?
So that's for a grad point, so
Oh,
that's it,
that's what you call
yeah.
that, okay. Great, okay,
He's the girls' basketball coach, you said?
Yes, yeah, he'll be in, this is his second year in that role also.
all right, opportunities for public comment? Hello, please state your name and address.
Hi there, I am Tracy Barrett, and my address is 4469 North Frederick. So I am one of those parents trying to understand the discrepancy between a child who's doing very well in school and grade performance and then the board exam results. So in this specific case, my daughter is in the 7th grade at SIS. She came through Lake Bluff. She's in advanced math. I just came from conferences with Mr. Ross, where he said she was very well prepared. And her board exam results are not proficient. So there were really, as I tried to understand on my own what that discrepancy could be caused by, I really came up with 3 possibilities, 2 of which I think came up tonight. The first being it was just a bad day. It was a fluke, ignore the test. The second, that the curriculum does not match what it should be, right? And I think that you guys have explored those topics tonight. The third that I just wanted to, maybe call attention to if it hasn't been considered, that I really do see that if you look at the example questions, that they really do stand out to me as a final exam that these children are being given. And it's not clear to me that they're being asked to study for finals. I think that in Shorewood there can be some hesitancy to teach to the test and use classroom time on something like that. to me, it would be a really valid test of our curriculum, if you will, to see if preparing them for the forward exam resulted in higher scores. I think as you look over, especially the math exam and the amount of math vocabulary that's on that test in the questions, I think it is worthwhile for kids to refresh. I also think it is a valuable life and school skill to learn how to study performance. So just to that, that's my comment.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Teresa.
There'll be one more option at a time, but anybody else have any comments? Okay. Board governance, so there is an updated linkage schedule for all of you. I think everybody was able to put in their availability. I guess what I would, want to say, and I think maybe we've already sent through, I guess, one email kind of alerting people to this, but I do think it's an opportunity for us. I've asked Brian to make sure that for all the school meetings that the principals are there, because that way we have an opportunity to hear from parents and to give them feedback on what's happening, particularly with these questions around grades and board exams and gaps. So, I'll send out we can send out additional reminders, but as you guys talk to people, to make sure that they know that that is an opportunity for us as a board to spend the next month, 10 hours spending time in the community and having just conversations. And so hopefully people will be able to come to those meetings, and if not, set up other times to do that. You guys will see that we were able to add the parents of students with special needs in November. So that wasn't on the original list. We need to go back and sign in if you're going to be able to make that meeting.
And that'll be communicated out to those families this week.
So can I ask, so we did that doodle poll, how I filled it out as to, I could be available to any of them, that does not mean I need to attend.
No, so
all
I'll
of these.
have Kelly send out who said yes, and then we can kind of see,
Okay, take those.
yeah.
Okay.
I think there's I guess my expectation is the one, I think we had all said we would be at some of them, and as long as, I think it's great to have at least two, and if people want to go to as many as they can, that's fine as well. But you can see if there's definitely coverage, and you were a maybe, that you can see. And then, did you have any questions?
No, I was just gonna say, I filled it out the exact opposite way. I filled it out committing to the ones that I went to.
Well, that's fine too.
That's where I was gonna.
I have a logistics question now. I don't think we've taken minutes in the past, and we've just done a report out from who was there. But I feel like it would be helpful to have at least just some list of topics that were discussed, so that we have some kind of record that's not just what we remember. Because speaking for myself, I'm in a lot of meetings and.
Yeah, we
don't
have
always-
taken Feda did take minutes, and so we can see
Yep.
either, and so I did the advanced learners one yesterday, and I wrote down all the questions that came up, and I thought I would send that, share that with you, but
Yeah.
it isn't the same as somebody doing that, so we can.
Yeah.
I'll work with Kelly and see which ones she can do, and then we can figure out the other ones. Okay. Emily, Shorewood moving forward update?
Yeah, so there was lots of discussion about sort of the role that the Facebook page and group play in the mission of the group. That was a lot of the meeting, but then there was also a significant discussion of the change in scope or focus of the diversity work group that the district runs. And I can't speak so that there were a bunch of people present who were also, who were on Shorewood moving forward, but also on that work group. And it's safely say some people felt like effectively the diversity work group was being disbanded, and they were not happy with that. And so they discussed what feedback to give the district, and I can't speak for them. I can just say you can expect, I think, to hear about,
you know, what steps they might ask for next. You know, I mean, I think the good news is, like, everybody who is in Shorewood moving forward and part of that, you know, and has historically been part of that diversity work group, really wants to make a difference in terms of, you know, actually affecting change in the district. There was pretty consistent feedback that the diversity work group didn't feel useful, like in terms of actually having an impact on policy, that it felt more like being a sounding board and a vessel for just like disseminating information. So there was some frustration there, and then I think the question going forward is, what now? So there was just a lot of discussion about how to then move forward. But again, I can't speak for the group, so that's just where discussion was.
Great, yeah. Just to clarify, so the work group hasn't been disbanded, so we still meet on a quarterly basis. I think it's right on though to say that just the identity of purpose and what that group, the purpose of that group will be moving forward is something that we'll talk about at the next time. And we also invited everybody in that work group and everybody in the community to our strategic framework development. And so that's going to be an opportunity to get staff and community members together to be able to really talk about areas of priority. That's where we'll be able to really kind of shape practices and policies as we would look at over the next 5 years. So we want to drive people to that conversation, but we will continue to have quarterly diversity work group meetings.
I did explain too, like, the way we're approaching this strategic planning update and why it matters to participate, et cetera. So, you know, I think, and to be, like, I think they were clear that you weren't saying it was disbanded, but they felt like that was effectively what was happening. And so that was where the, you know, sort of question is, like, what do we really want this group to be?
Yeah. It's a good question.
And I just wanted to add, I've had some of the same questions, and I didn't have the history behind a lot of that, so I had said I would at least look into it. So if there's clarification on what that, I think explaining that a little bit better would be helpful. But I also think that there will be more requests about that.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, at the next diversity work group meeting to be able to really spend some time defining purpose.
When is that?
So they're quarterly. So it would be, I think it's scheduled at this point, it has to be January.
Yeah, because a couple of folks that approached me about it, they are assuming there is never going to be another one.
Yeah, and that's not true. So we communicated that to the group. So, and we can reiterate that.
Okay, thanks. Did you go to SWASA this morning, Pablo?
We didn't have one this morning, we had one 2 weeks ago.
Oh.
So both Brian and Martha and I went to that one. We got an update on where things were in the legislature, and I've sent you all updates in the last few days, things that have moved out to committee, to the floor, so on and so forth, and where they are in the process. We spent the bulk of the meeting planning for the next year and a half in our legislative strategy in small groups around our around the goals that we have, the legislative priorities we have as SWASA. So that was helpful, fruitful, chance to work with folks from other districts. It's always good to partner and try to see where we have where our interests converge, so we can lobby together for the good of all of our students. I don't know if you want to add more, Brian, to that meeting?
No, I think that was good.
Great, and then I was unable to go to the SEED meeting yesterday because I was at the linkage, but Brian was there.
Yeah, Marta and I were present there. So I just gave a district update on a couple of the events that we have next week, both the strategic framework development session on Monday, and then the facilities update on Wednesday. A lot of conversations at the meeting around developing a marketing committee within SEED to really focus on telling stories and thinking specifically around teacher grants and how can we just continue to communicate the importance of giving and how it directly relates to students. And so Caitlin will be part of that process, along with 3 or 4 members of the SEED organization, to be able to put together some more deliberate marketing opportunities for their organization. So that was probably primarily the conversation.
Great. All right, we have a consent agenda with meeting minutes.
I move we approve the consent agenda with the corrections previously noted.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. One more opportunity for public comment. Welcome back.
Janet Cryline, 2016 East Menlo Boulevard. So, next Wednesday is the referendum, public meeting.
Facilities,
Facilities meeting. And I can't find that it's been advertised. I feel like I saw it maybe somewhere, but when I went back and looked at Infinite Campus, I don't see it being distributed through Infinite Campus, but maybe I'm wrong. Or on the village manager's memo, maybe. I just feel like that's an important touch point, and we need to get that out
There's gonna
soon
be,
because it's coming up quickly.
Yeah, there's
So-
a, paper.
Postcard.
Postcard.
The mailer that went out last week,
Yeah.
or earlier this week.
Yeah,
But,
that's
no, you're
a
right,
good point.
that's a
Yeah.
good point.
So, yeah.
Yeah, you can get that out.
Anyway, that's it.
Thank
Oh,
you.
okay.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Sam Knox. I'm at 4475 North Ardmore Avenue, and I just want to speak briefly on the academic scores. I'd just like to point out that generally this has not been a one-year problem in my view. It's been trouble since the Shorewood test has started. You were a 5th grader in Lake Bluff, and you took the average scale score from the forward for your class. It was 648.1. It dropped to 634.9 by the time you were in 8th grade. And that happened in every single class except for the first one, which was 7th and 8th. Their scores just dropped, each one. And it's been consistent. I'm kind of concerned as a parent that we don't know what's going on, and we're only belatedly trying to actually figure out what's happening. It would be really helpful from my perspective if the district could release the course of study at both the at least 5th grade and above, from 5th to 8th grade, so that parents could help themselves. Possibly reopening the idea of having a committee system, so that, not necessarily so that the committee could direct the board as to what to do, but that the board could watch the committee work and perhaps learn, because basically a lot of the parents are gonna try and solve these problems that we're experiencing, because it doesn't seem like anyone else is. And I think it would benefit the district if that happened inside the district's purview as opposed to outside of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you. Hi.
Katie Tesfer, 4330 North Alpine Avenue. I just had a question about the linkage meeting for parents of students with special needs. I am wondering if there will be specific discussion topics, and mostly I'm interested in the facilities being discussed in that meeting, and then along with that, wondering how any feedback that comes from that discussion is going to be incorporated into the facilities plan.
Yes, I can talk quickly about that. Yeah, so we'll have the architects and construction people will be at that meeting. So we're doing reviews based on the schematic design process that we had at the last meeting. Now we're going back and looking at, back with staff and then with some parent groups. That group would be another example of where are we, what are some things that we missed, that type of thing, and then making upgrades to that as we see fit. So there's still time. We're in the kind of the waning parts of making changes, but there's still time before we would put together a construction document. So that feedback will again be directly to be able to ask questions, but also be able to provide feedback that'll be collected that night as part of that linkage.
Okay, thank you.
Julie Knox, 4367 North Alpine. And I just want to add on to Katie's comment. I was here, I think it was last meeting when the architects were here and they were talking about the special needs and the way she phrased it, it was just a short passing phrase, is that she was thinking it was the arrangement of the actual ramp, as opposed to all the different ways that special needs people would access the school. And so I'm gonna ask is that you reach out to the architect, that they're not just expecting what's the geometry of this ramp and a couple physical things, but they're looking at the broader range.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Review of to-do items. I'll let you start, Brian.
So we'll get the communication out for the linkage with the students, parents of students with disabilities. Just get that communication out. Look at make sure that we get on the agenda the math and reading updates in February to work through that. Like we had talked about, looking at closed session to talk about some of the follow-ups from the discussions with the budget and IDEA restrictions. And some of the things that came up tonight to be able to look at like an IC blast just to follow up with the facilities communication. So that's what I have.
You mentioned the agenda. Well, the other thing I wanted to add is that I asked at the last meeting to have an update on how the playgrounds are gonna utilize student voice, and I'm still waiting for that information, so at the next meeting, can we get that information?
As an agenda item?
Well,
or
in
just
your
part of the
facility
facilities
update.
update? Sure.
Did you add on the to-dos to add agenda items to discuss the owners?
Yeah, I was gonna put that on,
Yeah.
I had it on my to-do list, yeah. So I guess, can you guys tell me a little bit about, for that, what information I should gather for that agenda item? I mean, what I did in prior is I talked to, there's, like two owners reps that work kind of, their organizations or companies that work predominantly in this area, in this, geography. So I have their information. And then, like I said, I don't have the list with me of the school districts I talked to about their experience. Is there anything else?
Maybe not that you have, but I think Marta had some potential candidates in mind who for their proposal originally who that could be. I think.
The consultant?
Yes, but
Okay.
my point is you want to compare.
Sure. Okay.
I guess just, and, because my memory is short, it's fine if we review what you had heard, but I think the thing that would be helpful for me to remember is like, what kind of scope did those other districts have, and both in terms of like their total budget, but also did they hire their owner's rep just to handle change orders, or did they have them, oversee the whole project and sort of pros and cons? If I'm happy to also like call a couple other districts or whatever, like if we know of others and you're short on time.
Okay.
Because I'm interested in hearing from as many people as we can, and even like I don't know if we have people who are experts in the community that have thoughts. I don't know. And maybe after this meeting, like we'll hear from people who say, "Oh yeah, you should do that," and here's why or whatever. Because I had heard months back about, even before it was approved, like before the vote happened, like if you do this, you definitely get an owner's rep, and didn't have in-depth conversations about that. So I'll try and ask a couple people I remember saying something about it, and just see like why and what their rationale is, and maybe it's more standard in other industries, and maybe that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that again, I think came up, and we'll talk about this.
Yeah.
next time, So, okay.
I guess I'm
That
curious
sounds
too,
good.
that information, for the proposal to only use it on proposed change orders, like, how often would that anticipated to be? And what's the scope of that process, and how the owner's rep would factor into that? Or, a little bit more in-depth process, I guess, question
Okay.
for the proposal that was laid out tonight. I know at one point we had talked about companies that kind of act as an owner's rep for certain parts of work. So
Mhm.
for electrical work, for roofs, for however bigger chunks of the budget, that you would use them specifically for that chunk of the budget and all the work that encompasses that. And, so I know we don't have as much information in that, and I'm happy to do some research in that, because that's a lot of the companies that I work with in my day job.
Okay.
But if we're exploring this, I wanna make sure we're exploring,
Other options,
perhaps a middle ground.
like a hybrid.
A hybrid, that if
Yeah.
there is cost savings there, to look at the bigger parts of the budget and where we look for,
Savings.
those savings.
Okay,
So
so you can do that, and then
I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think hopefully what we find is a sweet spot where it pays for itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would
Okay.
be ideal.
Any other future agenda items? Oh, sorry.
Was there anything, I just wasn't sure, was there anything you needed to do to make sure that, the last two, community members that spoke, they wanted to make sure that those topics were discussed in the linkage? We'll make sure that those are on the agenda. Is that a to-do, or?
Relay those back to
Yeah, one of them
the
wanted to, I
architects
think she
around
said
the-
you wanted to relay your comment back to the, construction.
Architects.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be something,
A
Julie.
few
Um,
months back,
yeah.
I think this had fallen off the radar or whatever table, I had asked for a rundown of the Meet the Match campaign, like, just a follow-up to, where the money went, where, how did it go,
So can we add that to the budget?
what's remaining, agenda for
The budget update?
Okay, yes. So just as a subtitle of the,
Yeah.
Yeah.
just a monthly
Update.
update?
Like an info, yeah.
Yeah. If there,
It might have to be a
also
separate
curious, like,
section.
is there money still earmarked for things, and, I don't know, just as a follow-up, more on behalf of the people who gave than anything else.
Okay, thank you guys. We are in recess.
Thanks.
Thank you.